Listen, there are a ton of Virgil Abloh moments to pull from. Pulling just 7 in our usual format is an injustice, so I suggest reading more articles and watching other videos to get the entire scope. That being said, what's up everybody, it's your boy THECASUAL and welcome to the Rank and File, where we give you 7 points in the fashion world plus a business angle so you can actually learn something and apply. Today, we're lining up 7 of Virgil Abloh's most iconic anything in his career, just the 7 most iconic things, and talking a bit about legacy. So with that, let's get it. Pyrex vision and Trill. You can't really talk about iconic moments in Virgil's career if you don't mention the beginning with Pyrex vision and subsequently Trill. For one, Virgil introduced us to his philosophy of taking something available and making it exclusive in Pyrex, taking Ralph Lauren shirts and marking them up by nearly 700% with just a print on them. Controversial to be sure, but it set the tone that Virgil would employ years later. Trill, on the other hand, was an example of how he and a selected few, which included Matthew M. Williams and Heron Preston, understood how irony and the cultural zeitgeist could be sold to a generation. While the brand didn't last that long, that is Trill, it proved that Virgil knew how to fuse the power of fashion and culture together. OffWhite. Subsequently with OffWhite, Virgil Abloh took some of those same elements of both Pyrex and Trill and created an immensely successful label. While the brand may prove divisive now, there's no denying its cultural impact. It was literally the trend for high-end street for a good 2 to maybe 3 year period. And the iconic belt remains a standout piece to this day. OffWhite still churns out official collections, but has benefited immensely from its collaboration with Nike, which brought about iconic design after iconic design, which we'll get into a little bit later. The IKEA collab. You remember this? This is crazy. Virgil, like Hiroshi Fujiwara, is a collaboration king. Listing out every single collab that this man has ever done would probably take its own episode. But with all of that, the IKEA collab was one of the most iconic for sure. Lending out his controversial but incredibly effective off-white design language at the time with IKEA was pure gold from a business standpoint, let alone stylistically. It set Virgil apart from others who had also occupied the furniture space before him. For one, the collab was with one of the most accessible furniture companies on the planet, that is IKEA, and two, it invoked the language of one of the hottest brands on the planet, which resulted in one of the most popular releases IKEA has ever done. And that's saying a lot, because a lot of people use IKEA, but people were going to IKEA for Virgil's stuff. That's pretty incredible. Samuel Ross. Now, one of the most overlooked elements of Virgil's iconic cachet is exactly how many individuals the designer has put on in different areas, which is actually one of my favorite things about Virgil Abloh as an individual. While also being a designer, he put a lot of effort into mentorship, with one of the most successful being the mentorship of Samuel Ross, the brand runner of A Cold Wall. Londoner Sam Ross has become one of the most notable success stories and designers over the last few years, and he's been in the industry because Virgil Abloh was willing to take him under his wing. Long story short, Ross reached out to Virgil, and after a rigorous mentorship, Ross was convinced by the late Abloh to start his label, A Cold Wall. And the results speak for themselves. Sam Ross isn't the only designer Virgil had a hand in building up, but he certainly is one of the biggest, and we're all lucky to have him. Nigo at LVMH. Nigo collaborating with Louis Vuitton was certainly one of the most surprising combos in fashion over the last few years. And it would have never happened without Virgil turning back the clock on the most influential individuals in street fashion or streetwear, whatever you want to call it. And in this case, Nigo, formerly of Bape and now of Human Made, which we all should know. The collab with LV certainly showed that Nigo had chops to design in a more sophisticated format, and it was actually pretty damn good. It wasn't bad at all. I actually enjoyed the look of it. This ultimately ended up with Nigo joining the entire LVMH family and becoming the new creative director of Kenzo, which at the time of this seems like it could yield tremendous results. Here's hoping, because Virgil certainly did, and without his influence, we probably would have never seen Nigo take that position. The Off-White Jordan 1. Like the 10. It's almost like enough said, but for posterity, the 10 is probably one of the most iconic sneaker releases of all time. In fact, let me rephrase that. The 10 is one of the most iconic sneaker releases of all time. Full stop. But none of the sneakers encapsulated the release as much as the original Off-White Chicago Jordan 1. Till this day, the sneaker remains one of the major benchmarks in sneaker design. Even if it isn't your cup of tea, like myself, I wasn't really into them. But you can't deny how iconic it was, going perfectly with the style du jour at the time and spearheading an entirely new era of sneaker releases and collaborative efforts that went far more designer than just simple colorways of the past. All in all, without the impact of the 10 and subsequently the Off-White Chicago Jordan 1, things certainly would have been very different. Indeed. LV Men's Artistic Director, probably the landmark moment of not only Virgil's career, but of this generation of fashion. Virgil's appointment at LV changed everything. He received more influence for sure, but with that, more criticism, more hate, more everything really. Without it though, much of what you see today wouldn't even exist. Fashion has gotten more diverse. It has put a spotlight on designers around the world, particularly black and brown ones. That's just the truth. I'm not trying to, spit some type of propaganda. It's just true. Basically, it opened every door possible, but it also gave individuals the wrong idea about the work involved, thinking that they could skip steps to becoming as hype as Virgil, which was simply untrue. Virgil, love his work or not love it, put in a ton of work, juggling several careers at once and ultimately becoming the embodiment of inspiration. And now, the business angle. Legacy. You could either build a legacy or take shortcuts. Either way, regardless of how you feel about Virgil's come up, it takes a lot to go from architecture, a master's in architecture in Illinois, getting a chance meeting with Kanye West, impressing him enough where he takes you with him to Japan, and then a Fendi internship to becoming the LV Men's Artistic Director. Skipped over a few things, but you get it. That takes tremendous work and dedication and vision. And Virgil is actually a case for higher education because quite possibly Virgil's biggest strength was his ability to articulate street in a language understood by the upper crust of fashion. I mean, there's a reason Harvard invites this dude as a keynote speaker. That's not to say you absolutely need higher education to make it in this world, but if you use it correctly, especially in the creative space, it can only help. Virgil proves that. Legacy in business and art is built on your knowledge of the mediums you choose to present, not just how successful you are. Plenty of people know a lot, but they don't share it, which means that nobody will ever know what they can offer. And that knowledge can be applied to so many different industries, from styling to teaching to consulting, which is incredibly lucrative, I know. Yeah, so all those things you can do with knowledge and sharing it. Virgil was active in sharing it, and the legacy he built was on giving his knowledge via what he spoke and what he showcased. So you can agree or disagree with his methodology, but you can't deny that his legacy will last because of the knowledge he was willing to share. Which, if you're in this space of art and fashion, is one of the most cherished aspects you can obtain. Now, we gotta do a little plug. Of course, we got plenty of firepower on Legacy and our Patreon, where we do our best to help up and coming brand runners and designers with our series class, our monthly webinar, extra content, and private Discord filled with others building their own brands, personal and fashion alike. So feel free to check us out there. And that's the rank and file. But as always, you can add to it and discuss in the comments. What other iconic moments of Virgil do you find notable? And what of legacy and legacy building? Do you want to build one? Do you not care? It's your world. Let it all be known. But most importantly, keep it locked right here for all of your info on international fashion, culture, and business from Tokyo. It's your boy, and keep it casual. Yoroshiku onegai shimasu. And I will see you guys in a minute.